Bhadram karnebi shrnuyama devaha Bhadram pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Stirairangaihi tushtuvagm sastanubhihi Yashema devahitam yadayuhu Svastina Indro Vrdhashravaha Svastina Pusha Vishwavedaha Svastina Starkshyo Arishtanemihi Svastino Brahaspatir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, 7 limbs and 19 mouths is by means by which the swaker interfaces with the waking state and operates as such. And we said that those 19 mouths, consuming instruments, they consist of 5 organs of perception, which means how you receive data from the external, organs of action. Now that you've received data, you have to do something. If I see a car, I have to move my feet. I have to use my hands. So it's an instrument by which you interface with this world of waking objects. 5 physiological functions: digestion, circulation, excretion. All of these functions need to work and keep your body alive. And there is 4 mental modes. And now these 4 mental modes is in one word, we call them subtle body, or the mind in English, or sukshma sharira. And they are, firstly, before I go there, do you remember how a vritti takes place in your mind? A vritti means a thought. How does the according reach your mind? Your eyes are open, the light reaches the physical brain, the image actually takes place inside your brain, it's not really out there. And then on top of that image, you impute ideas, your own ideas. To the degree to how many ideas you impute, to that degree, there is a gap between my inner experience of the object and an actual object out there. So what we have to do is slowly, the more you listen, and as we mature through life, we are removing those gaps, right? Kind of removing those ideas and stories. This is okay, we all have them, but this is a long journey. And to that degree, you experience what we call in Vedanta triptihi, that contentment, that inner contentment, even after you know who you are completely. Even then, the knowledge, it's weak, it's still shaky. So you say, I open my eyes, I know that's only Om here, everywhere is Om, and the person who's saying this is also Om, but there's not much of a difference between before and after. I still feel, sometimes down and sad, and I will still judge people, I judge myself, I don't experience myself as confident, I'm still a little bit shy, introverted, and yet I know that I'm Brahman, which is the entire universe, and everything depends upon this Brahman. So now there's a gap between what you know and how these descriptions in the scriptures, they all say, the wise person is home wherever they go. They go to a different country, they feel at home no more or less than they feel in Germany or Antarctica or in America, here or there. And you're like, well, I don't feel home. I only feel home in Germany. I don't feel home somewhere else. But as time passes and you work on your mind and you re-listen, remember that auspiciousness, that mantra? What is the most important thing I can hear? That which is my truth. How many times? Once or twice? We said at least twice. On and on and on. And every time you listen, it removes those notions, those gaps. It removes one less disc. And that gap reduces. And how do you reduce those gaps? Repeated listening. Tomorrow, next day. And it's very, very slow. Okay. Now that should be actually exciting, because sometimes people will say, I'm not getting progress. And I say, well, you're not the only one. It's just so now my dissatisfaction is between progress, empirical progress, like a flower rising, expressing its full brightness, and just the first, bud coming out. It takes seasons, 4 seasons. So nature has mastered patience. We too need to master that patience in reference to our own progress. So if you ever think that you're going slow in this journey, believe me, everyone else is experiencing the exact same thing. Even those who are extremely like sponges and they can quickly assimilate things and it's just all happening, even they would testify at least 10 years. 10 years for significant, or not significant, but noticeably, contentfully noticeable changes, at least 10 years. Okay? So now that we've put a standard upon that, 10 years. 10-year gaps is what I accept. Any less than that, don't, there's no need to get disappointed or like you're not moving forward. It's okay. When I began teaching this, though the knowledge is 100% clear, because when it takes place, it's clear. But I noticed, and the other students are saying the same thing, I know this reality, it's all clear, but it's like, that's it. Like, that's it. I'm still same perception, same person, same feelings. And I say that exactly. Now comes the real hard work. And so the real hard work, another 8 years at least it took to have that genuine relaxation, as the scriptures talk about, that tripti, that, you know what, I desire nothing. If I have it, wonderful. If I don't have it, genuinely wonderful. Not pretending, I can have it, it's okay, I don't need anything. Not that pretending, but genuinely, whether you have or you're in a relationship or not, you're genuinely equally contentful. There's literally no way for anything to make you more contentful or less contentful. There's something about you that remains always equally the same. Now, initially, even though you've understood who you are, because your mind is still dumping all these impressions, how things should be and shouldn't be, it makes it appear like you have a long way to go, even though you're already fine. You are fine as you are. So that time, that 10 years, makes that balance. And that requires hard work. Yeah. Cool. So that we are accepting of that reality, let's talk about the 4 vrittis that are constantly shifting and shaping according to the inner world. The first is buddhi. This is a buddhi, vritti. It's a vritti. Cognitive capacity to dissect something, to put it together, to look at the relationship between things, to see when is time for this, and what is the connection between this and that, and when is time for this, and how do they come together. And if I remove one, can I fill in the gaps? And if there's an extra addition, can I notice with my buddhi that this addition does not belong here, it needs to go somewhere else? And if there's a subtraction, something's missing, am I able to spontaneously fill it in with the right thought system? That's the buddhi. It's constantly assessing and reorganizing information to make sense of reality. It's like I say to you, there was once a story of, we'll talk about this later. A man was on an elephant and he was encountered by a drunken man on the ground. And the drunken man on the ground says, "Hey, you man on the elephant, I also am standing on an elephant. Charge against me." The guy's, on the ground. Now, what does the man on the elephant say or think? Compassion. You are drunk, you're not thinking straight. He just walks past. Right? So that means your buddhi able to see the cognitive gaps in other people, but it doesn't judge. It says, look, this is where you're at. It's okay. I too was at this point. It doesn't make sense what you're saying, but you know what makes sense or not. So who becomes the ultimate judge? End of the day. Not some lord over there. Your own buddhi becomes the judge. That's called wisdom. So that's buddhi, cognitive capacity. Next is manas. Manas is when you see an object that is keeping with what is, there's a certain confidence about it, a certain comfort. So that's your indicator how well you're aligned, how well your buddhi is aligned with an object. That means you're comfortable with it. Have you ever noticed those times where you're in the presence of something or someone and there is something in you that's not comfortable? Something's off. Okay? We all have this. In that moment, that's your emotional system, your manas buddhi, telling you that things are not how they could be otherwise. So that too we honor. And then we have smriti. Smriti or chittam is the ability to compare this drink to something that has been drunk before. And so by that, I can make an inference and say, this must be tea. If you didn't have memory, then what would happen is you could not hold one single thought. I don't know why you're looking at that, because it's bright, isn't it? You could not hold one single thought, even for me to resume the conversation now, after I just changed the topic into the light. I'll be like, I know why you looked at the light, because it's too bright. And it would be inappropriate. There was once a lady, I just saw her on YouTube. She has a short-term memory, 7 seconds. There's a 7-second memory man, but this is called a 7-second memory woman. Something about the number 7. And what she's doing is she says, to you who has a memory, for me, writing everything down is like for you breathing. So while I'm talking to you, you're having a piece of paper. You go, okay. So everything I'm saying, you have to write symbols and what happened. And she says, if I don't have my journal, then if I pass 7 seconds, if I try to remember, I will feel a sense of disconnection. And it's going to be like just being born for the first time. I will feel lost, like, what am I doing here? I shouldn't be in this room. Who are you? So she has to constantly keep things down on a piece of paper. Your memory is like that. Right now, there is a system in you that's constantly going, okay. He's talking about memory. Okay, before the memory, he talked about the light. Before the light, he talked about satyamitya. He talked about the prayer, how you need to have repeated listening, and so on. Your memory is doing that right now. Are you doing any of that on your own? Yeah. So that too is an arrangement of Ishvara's system. Did you ever have a time in your life, or maybe you saw someone, and I think there's a psychological or biological condition, where the person feels like they're somewhere else. Their body's here, but they feel like they're a little bit out of their body. There's a physical condition for this, and they have to give you something. But imagine that you're here, but you feel like you're out of your body. You're not in your body. That would be uncomfortable, wouldn't it? Yeah. So for that reason, how do you know what makes it appear like or seem like the experience is happening here and not over there? Why is that? If this is sharp thorn and I go, press hard, why will the pain appear in this domain and not somewhere else? Why would that happen? That's because of the eye sense. So what the eye sense does, it's another vritti. It's the longest lasting vritti in the waking state. All other vrittis, like the buddhi, it calculates which direction to go. Done. It's over. But what vritti remains there? The eye sense, the eye. So what the eye sense does is it takes all the data that the vrittis, that the buddhi is processing, all the data that the chittam, the memory, is processing, all the data that the manas, so the emotions, are processing, and then it says all of that data, those 3 pieces of data, where is that happening? It's happening over here and not over there. Another way to say it's happening to me. So when you say it's happening to me, what you're really saying is it's spatially happening, located over here within the boundaries of this body and not somewhere else. So what's the purpose of the eye sense? It's to help you recognize that when there is a injury to your body, it's happening to your body and not somewhere else. When there is a discord or distortion between what is over there and what my mind sees, and that discomfort belongs to me. If the I sense wasn't there, you could not ever grow. You'll be too disoriented. It will be like being hungry, and then I start to feed you. Yeah? Like, why are you feeding me? Because I'm hungry. Yeah, but feed yourself. But I am feeding myself. No. We need to press a few buttons, and then what happens? It moves that sense of I and makes it right here, no more and no less, exactly within the boundaries of the body. That's what the I sense does. And that too you can manipulate, and then it feels like you're somewhere else. Now what happens is, sometimes this I sense, this ahamkara, is not receiving any information from the buddhi, or the manas, or the memory. Do you know what you call that? The I sense is still there, but it's not receiving any information from the other three. What do you call that in spirituality? No mind, thoughtlessness, meditation. And what people sometimes think, in fact I would say sometimes is an understatement, but what they think 99% of the time is thoughtlessness equals who I am. But what's still there? The waking observer I sense. That waking observer I sense will be completely gone in the dream. For instance, in the waking, I say, I am a confident man. I am a confident, successful man. That's my I sense, because it's owning the data of the buddhi, all the information that the buddhi has collected, and the memory from all the waking states. And then the I sense owns that. So what is your I sense owning right now? All the wakers before this waker. Okay? So where is that I sense? Where is that I in the dream? That confident man in the dream when he's a beggar running away from a mountain lion being chased on a mountain, who experiences oneself as maybe super energized, but in the waking they were so tired. In the waking they said, I am hungry. I have a desire for programming. In the dream, you have no desire for programming. You couldn't care less about programming or whatever your thing is. You're a totally different person in the waking as with the dream. But in the dream and the waking, you think that is completely real for me. I am this person. I am this entity, full stop. So these four are the mental modes, and an example how buddhi can become your complex. An example. In childhood, suppose you were very good in, suppose you were good in that. Okay? And what owns that experience? The I sense. So now the I sense adds additional by looking at the world and says, you're not good at that, but I'm good at that. So it forms now a complex. That means even if a teacher told you you're so good in maths, then the buddhi, what's good in maths? The ahamkara or the buddhi? The buddhi is good in maths. The ahamkara just owns that experience of being good in maths. But the ahamkara now has a complex. Oh, being good in maths means X, Y, Z. I am better than you. I am superior, and so on. So every one of these three becomes a complex. Even having a good memory. Person says, I've got a great memory. Therefore, I am, awesome. Because the ahamkara owns that memory too. Okay. So, would someone like for me to summarize how experience takes place in the waking state based on everything we said? What's the first thing that happens for experience of the accordion to take place? First thing senses have to work. Okay. So the question is, how does waking experience take place? Why is this true right now for me? Okay. First thing, eyes have to open. Next thing, use the four modes. The four modes. What is the memory doing now when it sees this recording? Comparing to something else. Now, when it compares to something else and looks at this recording, it then needs to interpret, what is this? What do I do with this? What kind of a vritti is that? The buddhi. Now, someone plays a nice music and it invokes a emotion. So therefore, manas. So eyes open, memory compares based on the past, the buddhi interprets, what am I seeing? Emotion adds a corresponding feeling depending on what kind of experience you've had of the according in the past. And the ahamkara says, this experience is happening over here. It's happening to me. And thus the waking state is now complete. And this waker we call Vishwa. Now, interestingly, look how the topic changes. Okay, so great, Vishwa. But then it says, who do you think you are all your life? I am a Vishwa, I'm a waker. And then the verse says, actually, what if I were to change your perception of your Vishwa as a single entity and say you're actually an extension of a much larger being called Vaishvanara? What is this Vaishvanara now? Okay, let's write it down. Vaishvanara means the collective of all physical beings. Okay, metaphor. We have an entire world, a planet, and soil. Soil. Suppose there's no buildings now. What grows from the soil? Plants. So imagine you're a plant, and a plant has different colors and different flavors. And what does a plant bear? Fruit. And every plant has different nutrition. So we could say from one total being, one total earth, grows different smaller beings which are an extension of that very earth. So now, can you say that the plant is different from the earth? Well, yes and no, but it actually ultimately comes from the earth, doesn't it? So like this, you, as a physical being, are not some isolated being in this universe. You've grown out of the universe. It's like this. Because you're an extension, without your physical presence, the total physical being, which encompasses all physical objects, could not be complete. Look at it like this. It's mutually dependent. You could argue that your brain designed your stomach to serve its purpose. What purpose would that be? So that the stomach can feed the brain. But the stomach designed the brain. Why? Because it knows that the brain is going to tell the arms to grab some food and feed the stomach. So who designed who? Did the brain design the stomach or the stomach design the brain? They're mutually dependent. You cannot say that the brain, because it's vaster, it's more superior than the stomach. It's like the environment. The environment gives home for small organisms, doesn't it? But once the small organisms fully flourish, then those organisms give that environment its full potential. What is there to say of an environment without organisms flourishing within it? So now, which one is more superior, the environment or the organisms? They're mutually dependent. So in that same way, when you look at a being, the total being, and you look at one single being, you're not an isolated human being in this universe. You're an extension of a much larger being. If I can't even acknowledge that my physical body is an extension of a larger physical being, how am I possibly going to acknowledge that I am the whole? So what the Mandukya Upanishad says is, let's take us one step at a time. And the way to relate to this total being, it says there's imagery. Vaishvanara, the total being. Imagine the sky. If you look in the sky, that is his head. The heaven, this is sky, is his head. So whenever you look up, I'm looking at a total being. It's just imagery. I'm looking at a total being. Hello, total being. The ground is his feet. So his feet support me. And the space between the sky and the ground is his blood. And you are like a good bacteria swimming inside the blood. Now, good bacteria does good for the whole ecosystem. Sometimes you have bad bacteria, but bad bacteria cannot survive for too long, could they? They get put in the right place. So what if you were to imagine yourself, just for a second, you're like a white blood cell, very important to the ecosystem of this total being. And you're literally swimming in his blood, in the Lord's blood in this moment. And the Lord says, without you, I'm incomplete. Because you're not different from me. And I need you to live in the light of the truth. I need you to do good for me because you're not different from me. You're doing good for yourself. And you say, wow, now I have a real big purpose here. I'm not just an isolated being, separate from everything. I serve the Lord.
Before you talked about the I sense and you gave it an order. Like first we see, then we have our memories, then we have our intellect, and then we have our emotion. But in reality they are just like a split second, and sometimes the emotion comes before the intellect.
Yeah. So ultimately there is no order, but we give it some order so you can make sense of the process. Yeah, so we cannot say it's like a slow construct, it's instantaneous.
Yeah, because the manas, the emotion, can dominate over the body while doing stupid things, no?
But then again, you have to have a concept of what is it that you're emoting about, and that concept requires the buddhi. So now the question is, did buddhi come first or the manas? Or there are one total unit called a subtle body, and the only way to understand a subtle body is to once again categorize it into 4 components. So it depends how you look at it, but ultimately you cannot give it a right order. Yeah.
How does the self-reflecting I sense start? Or doesn't it have a start? Or is that which always is?
How does it start?
Yeah, because it seems like it can be not there. The I reflecting sense.
I didn't use reflecting, I just said I sense.
Yeah, but at a certain point we have a reflection of ourselves.
Well, I mean, you can call it a reflection. In this example, I'm just saying it is that which makes it seem like it's happening over there and not over here. On another teaching, another Upanishad, I will use the whole, reflecting medium teaching, and the reflecting medium is the I sense, but I'm not using that in this Upanishad.
No, my question is, if this is the same as Atman, is God the I sense, or is the I sense coming to God? Is it Mitra or isn't it Mitra?
We said the mind has 4 functions, so we didn't speak about Turiya. Okay, dream state consciousness. Swapnasthanaha antaha prajnaha sapta anga ekona vimshati mukha pravivikta bhuk tejasa dvitiya pada. The second quarter is Tejasa, whose sphere of activity is the dream state, who is conscious of internal objects, who is endowed with 7 limbs and 19 mouths, just like the waker, and who is the experiencer of subtle objects. You had a feast in the waking, satisfied, and that satisfaction is gone in the dream, isn't it? Why is that? Why is it that you can have a cut on your physical body, and when you fall asleep, that cut is no longer felt? What does that say about, what can you now infer about the dream and the waking? If there is a cut or pain or a headache in the waking state, and that headache belongs to the physical body, and that pain is no longer felt in the dream, then what inferences can you create from that connection?
It's fake.
Hmm?
No, it's a joke. I said it is fake, but that's a joke.
It's getting its impressions from another dimension.
Because it's not available in the dream anymore.
No notion of the physical body.
No notion of the physical body, okay. So then what does that say? But what's still in the dream? Thoughts. Thoughts. Huh? Projections, impressions. If there's one thing that we can say for sure, what's inside the dream? Thoughts. Because it's just a bunch of mountain and line and so on. But there is no physical pain. So what does that say? The subtle body can be free of the physical body. It's not entirely disconnected, is it? Because you can still have a barking dog and it will wake you up in the dream. So it's not entirely disconnected. But that's not where we're going. What we're saying is, in the dream, your subtle body is not completely connected to your physical state. And so you don't experience all the physical conditions they don't pass over into the dream. Why? Because the subtle body is not completely connected to the physical. So that subtle body that's connected fully in this physical body, because it's fully connected to the physical body, for that reason, to that subtle body who you think you are, a bunch of thoughts, you say, I am this physical person. But when the dream comes, that disconnection happens, then at once you say, I am this person. This person who? The one who has projected my own physical body. That physical body in the dream to you is as real as the physical body here. But what's the only difference between the two? Are you creating this physical body right now? Are you imagining it? When you close your eyes and you open your eyes, you will see the same body. So then who is creating this physical body? If there's one thing we can say, not you. But in the dream, you create that physical body, and as long as you're dreaming, that physical body in the dream is going to be there for you. Did you ever have an experience where you're dozing off or having a nap? And did you notice what happens when you have a nap? What happens to your attention about the outside world? Does it go more outwards or more inwards? It goes more inwards. And when it comes to a certain point, a certain crescendo, a certain point, what happens? Automatically, a world, an inner world arises. And you become a taijasa. You identify in that moment as a taijasa, the dreamer. So the more your senses withdraw, the more the inner world starts to take hold and become more real than the physical world. So what makes this physical world disappear for you? What has to happen for this physical world to disappear? Yeah, you have to turn your senses inwards. And the moment you turn your senses inwards, what happens? Instantly projects your own world. So the question is, more important, what is the purpose of the dream teaching? Except just talking about, dream is fascinating and you can learn from the dream. What's the purpose of the dream?
It releases also emotions in it. Like it takes things from the day and then it turns them out and then it puts something into another story in order to release it and to let go of it. It's like
Good.
digestion. Yeah.
Good. Suppose you didn't have a dream or the deep sleep. Could you ever tell, or would you ever question the ontological reality of your waking? if you never had a dream or the sleep, and this is the only world that you could ever have, would you ever question the reality that you're living in now?
I don't think so.
No way. This will be absolutely real for you. The moment you add a second state, it immediately negates the truthfulness of the first one. So what is the dream showing you? That this waking state is only as good as or dependent upon your five senses working. If you didn't have the five senses, there is no such thing as the waking state. I just give you five senses, immediately a whole world arises out of nowhere. It wants to show you that you don't need the five senses, or you don't need the physical body to know that you are. Without the dream, I would think that I need the waking state to know that I am, that I exist. But without the waking, I still know that I am. I still know that I don't need the waking to know that experience can take place. So it shows you that you don't need the waking state for experience to take hold. You don't need it. You can create your own experience. So now what kind of status does that teaching give to the waking state? It reduces it. It reduces the status of the waking state. Not in a way it's inferior. It just says it's not as real as I thought. In the dream, what constructs the subject, the object, and the thoughts about the object? Your mind. The subject is constructed by your mind. Another subject, the person, is constructed by the mind. The object is constructed by the mind. And the thoughts, the knowing about the object, that's also constructed by your mind. The subject, the object, and the knowing. The knower, the known, and the knowing. All three are constructed by your mind. But in the waking, there's also a subject, isn't there, right now? There is an object, an accordion, and there is thoughts or knowing about the accordion. That too is equally constructed, but not by my mind. That's constructed by organizing intelligence. So my mind constructs subject, object, thoughts. Organizing intelligence constructs subject, object, thoughts. So which one is now more real? Considering my mind is also made of the same organizing principle. Which one's more real now?
Relatively real.
Only as real as the state that you're standing in. So what's the third teaching of the dream state? The state that you are in, depending on the body that you're given, to that degree, your reality is true. If you're standing in a body, if the subtle body is standing in a physical body, to that degree, the physical world is true. If your subtle body is standing in a dream-constructed world or body, to that degree, that world is true for you. If you have an intoxicant, that world becomes true for you. So now, which world is true for you? Suppose we had not only 3 states, suppose we had 20 states. And each state, when you're in it, you say, this is absolutely true, and I'm going to make things work in this state. How do you know which state is you're in now? How do you know which state is more superior now if both of them are just mere constructs? Waking state, dream state, sleep. Suppose you have bugu bugu state, lala lala state, and jigi jugu babego state. And you alternate between these 5 or 6 states. Then how do you know which one's real? Which one should I consider real? Because every one of them seems real as long as I'm in that state. When I'm out of the waking state, what waking? It's unreal. I am now in the dream state. This is the real thing. Then you go back into the waking state and you smoke something. And now you say, this place, I tell you, this is the ultimate. Like, I am never going to go back to that waking. That waking was clearly not real. I'm staying here forever. And you're totally convinced that the new state you're in is the thing that's going to last forever. You don't even question the duration of how long it's going to last. For you, it's eternal. Totally convinced. So which state now should I give more attribution to, considering the waking has come and gone, the dream has come and gone, the induced state has come and gone? Which one should I give more reality to, if they all come and go? That's the purpose of the dream state, to show you that you don't need the waking or the five senses or the physical body to continue to experience. Number two, the mind and the object and the subject and the knowing is constructed by the mind. In the waking state, it's equally constructed by the intelligence. In the waking, I consider that subject real, object real. In the dream, I consider the subject real, the object real. The waking lasts 15 hours. The dream lasts 5 hours. And yet in the dream, how long does it really last? We only say 5 hours from the standpoint of the waking. How long is the dream in the dream? Sometimes eternal. And that eternity becomes more real to you than the 5 hours in the waking state. So now which one is real? Is it the 5 hours real or the eternity is real? If you contrast them both. And then it continues, it says, this dreamer is awake to internal objects. Okay. Where do these internal objects in the dream come from? You see things in a dream, don't you? Where do they come from? The waking. But do you know that? No. So you see someone in the waking, and you say, I recognize you, but I can't tell how. Why not? Because you have no access to the waking. But I know that I know you. I know you somehow. I met you some lifetimes ago. I can't explain how. Because I have no access to the memory or access to the waking. In that same way, when you see something or someone in the waking state or see some teaching, you say, I relate to this teaching, but I can't explain how. I can't explain my life. That's because you don't have access to the waking state of that previous person who's no longer here. You don't have access to many things that have happened before.
Same as rebirth.
Same thing with rebirth. Yeah. Which we'll talk about specifically. How do you prove that there is a continuation, a certain Passover? Deja vu is explained scientifically also. I question that. I wouldn't use that as proof. Yeah, I looked into that. It's where the brain, if I remember, it slows down, something happens and it has to catch up. And it gives an impression that you've already experienced it before. It's a psychological phenomena. Yeah. Sorry to break your notion of that. But Vedanta does not, it questions everything. There's no space for romance. It just wants to look at everything. Yeah. Twin flames, soulmates and all that. It's all, good language, but, Now, it says, let's move individuality, your so-called sense of subtle body, your subtle body. That subtle body, just like the physical body, is an extension of a larger being. Your subtle body, when I say subtle body, what am I including? All your skills, talents, impressions, desires, aspirations, passions, what you want, what you think is important, all things that you like, all things that you know, everything. That subtle body is not yours. That subtle body is an extension of a larger being called Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is the totality of all subtle, and your subtle body is just one small fraction of Hiranyagarbha. So anything that you value or any skills that you have, that's not your skills. That is just one portion of the total collective blueprint of all intelligence, like a database. And one little drop of the entire ocean of intelligence is given just to you. And then you say, hey, look, I am great at playing a harmonium, a piano, or teaching, or speaking, or mathematics. Not yours. So, the question is this. How will I relinquish my individuality, my sense of separation? How would I dissolve that if I cannot even accept myself as part of a much larger intelligence? Step by step. I'm not just an isolated physical being in this universe. I'm an extension of a larger being, which includes all of us. We're like little, good bacteria floating in his total body. The trees are also in his body. The flowers, the birds, the rain, the sunshine, the clouds, the galaxies, the universe, the supernovas, the explosions, the sun, all elements are all inside his physical body. And you're not different from that. And your thoughts are just one expression, one little tiny expression, fraction of his total intelligence. So honor it, cherish it. That's why my skills are not your skills, and your skills are not my skills. Because every human being, every insect is assigned a specific skill. For instance, a bird has a skill to land on the same branch a year later. That comes from the song, right? It comes from this a place where a bird can fly away, and it lands on the same branch it landed a year ago. Can you do that? It finds the exact same island, exact same place. It knows which direction to travel without a compass. That skill is given to a bird, not to me or you. That's also birds' little skills from the total Hiranyagarbha. So what's the purpose of this? To cherish that whatever you know is all you know, all you will ever know. See, we all have this secret kind of desire, I want to know everything. Not going to happen.
You will.
Yeah, you will. Better work at that. Okay? And that's an incentive. If you want to know everything, finish your journey on earth. I wonder how this changes your relationship to what you know right now. It's an extension, it's just an expression of a larger being. What does this do for you? Maybe makes you more relaxed that, hey, thank you for giving me these skills. Now let me make the most of them. I will never know more or less than I know right now. I don't have to become some, super professor at geography and history and archaeology and science and cosmology. This is what I know. I'm okay with that. And even if I know a lot more, I still know how much? A tiny, tiny fraction. So this removes any kind of self-esteem issues of not knowing. It's okay to not know. Like, I relax now. I can revel in the little bit that I'm given. As long as I'm a human being, my job is not to know everything. It's only to know what needs to be known. So, let's look at water, for instance. We have physical water, but what about water's subtle aspect? What does water do on a physical level? Well, it exists, I guess. You could say it just falls down, it turns into structures. But what does water do at a subtler level? It detoxifies your body. That's a subtle function of the water. What about taking the same food with the same nutrition, that's physical, exactly the same nutrition, but you eat one food, it makes you lighter. You take the same food with the exact same composition and nutrition, it makes you heavier. What about a sound, which is just sound waves? Sound, merely physical waves, reaches your ear, and one sound wave makes you peaceful. That's a subtle effect. And another sound wave makes your subtle body feel agitated. That's the subtle aspect of sound. Yes, sound for sure has physical wavelengths, but it also has a subtle aspect to it. Because everything is inside one being. Everything is pervaded not only by physical, but also the subtle. Everything has a function. Even something as inert as water serves to detoxify. That effect is the subtle aspect of water. Without it, we would all be dead by now. What about a seed? Where did this come from? The ground? Was this always like this? No. It was a tiny, tiny thing once upon a time. And what was inside that thing if you ground it up? Powder. But that seed has a subtle function. It has an intelligence, a blueprint for a complex assemblage of bark, of roots, of nutrition, of color, of skin, of tallness, of how to respond to the seasons, how to convert carbon dioxide to oxygen, which way to face the sun, how to face the sun, how deep the roots to go to hold themselves against high, strong winds, what nutrition that specific plant will have, and to whom it will be nutritious and to whom it will be poisonous. One insect or species takes a plant and it dies. Some other species takes a plant, the same plant, and it thrives. You see the connection between the subtle functions? Where is that intelligence inside that seed? Can you find it? Is there any one atom inside that says Ishvara, Om, floating around in an atom, in a liquid? You're not going to find that. You will only find physical matter. But you cannot argue out that that physical matter somehow is pervaded inside a seed. We're talking powder. Inside that seed, mere atoms, that much is pervaded by intelligence that will give it an entire tall oak tree. Not an apple tree, an oak tree. And it will have a function to the surrounding environment. And when another tree grows, then fungi, what will happen is every tree develops roots separate to itself. But then fungi develops interconnecting threads that connects the roots of two trees. Do you know why? Why would fungi just sort of interfere with the roots of two trees? Or is it really interfering? It's not interfering. What it's doing is it's creating a communication network between two trees. Because you see, in a forest, when there is one tree that's covered by other trees and it's not receiving enough sunlight, then that tree needs to survive. And it will send a distress call, a distress signal to other surrounding trees, thanks to the fungi that's developed that network. And what will the other surrounding trees do? Red alert, let's send some nutrition to this tree that's not getting enough sunlight. And the tree will be happy, and it will continue like that for 1,000 years. You think, wow, what a strong independent tree. And yet it's fully in communication with its buddies. And yet you look at that fungi and you just say, oh, it's just roots. And it has a huge, crucial function for that entire assemblage of the forest. Where do you find that subtle function? You don't. You don't find it in the physical analysis. You find it by observing the relationship between things. And this leads us, next session, to deep sleep consciousness. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.